Today we are going to talk about Emperor who gave up war. This is a chapter from class 6 NCERT textbook. In this chapter, we will be talking about the Emperor Ashoka who belonged to the Mauryan Empire. Here, it is significant enough to mention that this empire was much bigger than the kingdoms which existed before this. Empires hold bigger territories as compared to the kingdoms. So, emperors need more resources than kings because empires are larger than kingdoms and need to be protected by big armies. Also, they need a larger number of officials who collect taxes. More than 2300 years ago, Chandragupta Maurya founded the Mauryan Empire. During his reign, Chandragupta was supported and assisted by a wise man named Chanakya or Kautilya. He wrote the famous text called Arthashastra. After Chandragupta, his son Bindusara became the next ruler. And then came Ashoka, one of the popular rulers of Indian history. For building up a huge empire, all three rulers should be credited. Let's have a deeper look into the Mauryan Empire. There were several cities in the empire. These included the capital Pataliputra, along with cities like Takshila and Ujjain. As you can see in this map, Takshila was a gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, while Ujjain lay on the route from north to South India. Merchants, officials, and craftsmen probably lived in these cities. Coming to Pataliputra, described by Megasthenes. Megasthenes was an ambassador who was sent to the court of Chandragupta by the Greek ruler of West Asia named Seleucus Nicator. Megasthenes wrote about Pataliputra. This is a large and beautiful city. It is surrounded by a massive wall. It has 570 towers and 64 gates. The houses of 2 and 3 stories are built of wood and mud brick. The king's palace is also of wood and decorated with stone carvings. It is surrounded with gardens and enclosures for keeping birds. Other than the cities, there were villages of farmers and herders. Villages have always been the basic unit of administration, which provided huge land revenue to the rulers. In some areas, such as central India, there were forests where people gathered forest produce and hunted animals for food. People living in these areas were more or less independent, but may have been expected to provide elephants, timber, honey, and wax to Mauryan officials. As the empire was so large, different parts were ruled differently. On the one hand, there were areas around Pataliputra which were under the direct control of the emperor. In these areas, officials were appointed to collect taxes from farmers, herders, craftspersons, and traders who lived in villages and towns in the area. Officials also punished those who disobeyed the ruler's orders. Many of these officials were given salaries. Messengers went to and fro, and spies kept a watch on the officials. And of course, the emperor supervised them all with the help of members of the royal family and senior ministers. Then there were other areas or provinces far from Pataliputra. Each of these areas was ruled from a provincial capital such as Takshila or Ujjain. Royal princes were often sent as governors to govern these areas. Local customs and rules were probably followed in these areas. The Mauryas also tried to control roads and rivers, which were important for transport and to collect whatever resources were available as tax and tribute. For example, the Arthashastra tells us that the northwest was important for blankets and South India for its gold and precious stones. These goods could be moved only with an effective transport system. The Mauryan Empire was surely a huge empire, and like any other king, the Mauryan rulers also aspired to gain more and more territories to expand their empire. But in the life of Mauryan ruler Ashoka came a phase when he decided to give up war and spread the message of peace and love. It happened when Ashoka fought a war to conquer Kalinga. But he was so horrified to see the violence and bloodshed that he decided not to fight any more wars. He is the only king in the history of the world who gave up conquest after winning a war. This is what Ashoka declared in one of his inscriptions. 8 years after becoming king, I conquered Kalinga. About 1.5 lakh people were captured, and more than 1 lakh of people were killed. This filled me with sorrow. Why? Whenever an independent land is conquered, lakhs of people die and many are taken prisoners. Brahmins and monks also die. People who are kind to their relatives and friends, to their slaves and servants, die or lose their loved ones. That is why I am sad and have decided to observe Dhamma and to teach others about it as well. I believe that winning people over through Dhamma is much better than conquering them through force. I am inscribing this message for the future so that my son and grandson after me should not think about war. Instead, they should try to think about how to spread Dhamma. Let's know about Ashoka's Dhamma in detail.
Dhamma is Prakrit form of the Sanskrit word dharma. The Mauryan Emperor Ashoka propagated the Dhamma, which was neither a new religion nor a new political philosophy. Rather, it was a way of life, a code of conduct, and a set of principles to be adopted and practiced by the people at large to create a peaceful society or community in the empire. Ashoka's Dhamma may also be treated as the policy of public welfare. The principles of Dhamma were formulated to be acceptable to people belonging to different communities and following any religion. Ashoka pleaded for tolerance of different religious sects in an attempt to create a sense of harmony. It emphasized tolerance of people and the notion of showing consideration towards slaves and servants. There is stress on obedience to elders. The policy of Dhamma also laid stress on non-violence, which was to be practiced by giving up war and conquests, and also as a restraint on the killing of animals. Ashoka attacked ceremonies and sacrifices as meaningless. The policy of Dhamma also included other welfare measures like the planting of trees and digging of wells. A group of officers known as Dhamma Mahamattas were instituted to implement and publicize the various aspects of Dhamma. Ashoka made them responsible for carrying his message to various sections of society. Now, let's have a look at the various aspects of Ashoka's Dhamma mentioned in the major rock edicts. Major Rock Edict 1 prohibits animal sacrifice and holidays of festive gathering. Major Rock Edict 2 is related to the measures of social welfare. It mentions medical treatment for men and animals, construction of roads, wells, and tree planting. Major Rock Edict 3 declares that liberality towards Brahmins and Shramanas is a virtue, and respecting one's parents is a good quality. Major Rock Edict 4 highlights the impact of Dhamma on society. It comments that because of the policy of Dhamma, the lack of morality and disrespect towards Shramanas and Brahmins, violence, unseemly behavior towards friends, relatives, and others, and evils of this kind had been checked. The killing of animals to a large extent was also stopped. Major Rock Edict 5 refers to the appointment of Dhamma Mahamattas. These special officers were appointed by the king to look after the interests of all sects and religions and spread the message of Dhamma. Major Rock Edict 6 is an instruction to Dhamma Mahamattas. They were told that they could bring their reports to the king at any time. Major Rock Edict 7 is a plea for tolerance amongst all sects. The plea is a part of the overall strategy to maintain unity. Major Rock Edict 8 states that Dhamma Yatras or tours would be undertaken by the emperor. The earlier practice of the emperor going out on hunting expeditions was given up. Dhamma Yatras enabled the emperor to come into contact with various sections of people in the empire. Major Rock Edict 9 attacks ceremonies performed after birth, illness, marriage, and before going on a journey. A censure was passed against ceremonies observed by wives and mothers. Ashoka instead lays stress on the practice of Dhamma and the uselessness of ceremonies. Major Rock Edict 10 denounces fame and glory and reasserts the merits of following the policy of Dhamma. Major Rock Edict 11 is a further explanation of the policy of Dhamma. It emphasizes the respect of elders, abstaining from killing animals, and liberality towards friends. Major Rock Edict 12 is another appeal for tolerance among sects. This edict reflects the anxiety the king felt because of the conflict between different sects or groups and carries his plea for harmony. Major Rock Edict 13 is of paramount importance in understanding the Ashokan policy of Dhamma. The Rock Edict pleads for conquest by Dhamma instead of war. Major Rock Edict 14 describes the engraving of inscriptions installed in different parts of country. Ashoka said, "My dominions are wide and much has been written, and I shall cause still more to be written. And some of this has been stated again and again, because of the charm of certain topics and in order that men should act accordingly." Now you may have a quick look at this map to know the territorial expansion of Ashoka's empire and how he ensured to spread his Dhamma with the help of edicts or inscriptions placed at the wide range of areas. Summing up, we may say that the Dhamma was a beautiful religion or spiritual thought to be used as a policy by any ruler. Ashoka's Dhamma was not simply a collection of high-sounding phrases. He consciously tried to adopt it as a matter of state policy to bring about unity, peace, and harmony. Thank you for watching. For more such academic videos, subscribe this YouTube channel Constructing Minds.